Happy Friday, everybody.
Happy Friday.
Happy Friday from Arizona. Hot. 116 yesterday.
Yikes.
Don't
Well,
they know
since
Labor Day's already passed?
it doesn't start cooling down till probably mid-October.
When does the snow start?
Oh,
Today.
yeah. We need to talk about that. Probably never. But you're 2 hours to snow and skiing here, so that's a bonus.
Fantastic.
Gary speaks to that well, right, Gary? Yeah.
So looks like I think Frank is our lender's not going to be on today, but it looks like the employment numbers kind of just give more uncertainty to the interest rate futures. For those of you who follow that or who care about it.
اوکی اومدم الان رو این
Just,
این که شنبه هست رو میگی
I'll text you the schedule.
اوکی thank you بعد اسم این
all right, so if you're going to talk, we'll just have you unmute yourself. And I'm just going to open up my my notes on the other computer screen so I'm not distracted. Let's see here. So today's topic is change screams opportunity, and it's kind of playing a little bit off of what we talked about last week. And I actually was down in our Virginia Beach office yesterday doing some role playing and using some role play cards. And if we don't have the context and the message and the delivery when we're communicating with our clients, what you hear is going to become the reality. But what I believe is true is that, maybe next year we'll have, an extra 200,000 transactions across the country, but I don't think it's going to be back to 2022 era. So I think what we're going to be left to do is there's going to be a finite amount of transactions, and the market is in a state of turmoil or resetting. So those who are focused on their skills, those will be the salespeople who are getting the transactions and also are deciding how they're going to be paid. Okay. It's going to become more of a skill-based business. And I think when we talk about skills in real estate, what comes to mind when I say we're in a skills-based business in real estate? Because I kind of got tripped up on this myself. So what skills come to mind that you think are critical?
Communication.
Communication. And in what context, Ron?
Well, you have to be able to communicate your message to your buyers and sellers appropriately and also with your knowledge.
And when you learned real estate, what chapter was communication in the pre-licensing course?
Oh gosh, I don't know. It's 41 years ago. I don't remember.
It didn't exist, and it still doesn't.
Still doesn't.
Right?
I think it's something that naturally happens to you as you grow more experienced in the business. You find that communication, because everybody makes mistakes along the way. So as you get more experience and more years under your belt, you become more of a communicator, more of an educator.
Who likes when you've done such a great job and your client refers their brother or their neighbor to list their house to you? Who loves that type of transaction, right? And who loves the transaction where somebody did a property valuation on your website and they don't want to answer the phone and they're dodging you and you're trying to chase them because they're going to list their house? Who loves that type of chase? Is there anybody? I don't see anybody that loves that. So what we need to do is we need to focus on, attracting business as opposed to timidly selling. Okay, and again, I'm looking at some of the experienced agents, some of the resumes, the results that those of you on this call have gotten. And your real estate resume is unquestionable. Where the opportunity is in the positioning and the communicating of the future vision, like future casting, what it's going to look like, and having that process for communicating. I'm going to get into some stuff that I stole from, or I borrowed from, the Exactly What to Say author. And watching one of his podcasts recently, he said, the book title is appropriate, but he said the reality of it should have been called Exactly What to Ask, because that's the way that the business works, through asking questions to give us a perspective on, positioning ourselves. If we are confident in what we're doing and now we're confused about how are we going to get paid, how are we going to set the commission, how are we going to communicate to our clients the pivot and the shift in the industry, we need to know the words, because it's, according to Phil M. Jones, it is impossible for humans to write, edit, and perform at the same time. So if you're winging it and you don't know what you're going to say, and editing is when the client says something that's off script, right?
A little bit more.
The problem with scripts are if the client doesn't know their part, sometimes the script falls apart, right? Does that make sense to anybody? Like, you have a script, you're prepared, and then they throw something in that you weren't expected, and then you really have to think about it. You have to pivot and edit. If you don't know how you're going to pivot with, standard objections, you're going to be challenged, and you're also going to be undercompensated, because you're not going to know how to defend what your value is.
That's because you need to have a really good presentation and you need to be knowledgeable so you don't make those mistakes. You got to be able to overcome any objection that's thrown at you.
It's true. And another mindset, or another pivot in terms of looking at scripts, memorizing scripts and dialogues, are to take it to probably one of the higher levels of people who read scripts. And if you look at some of the best actors, okay, they get scripts, but what they do is they play a character. They don't read a script, okay? And they get into the character so much that some of the best lines in Hollywood's history have come from actors getting into the character and going off script, because they become the character. Okay. So scripts and role playing, not cliche, scripts and role playing are going to give us the foundation to come up with these answers without having to think. They'll give us the ability to edit and to pivot when people make adjustments.
Hey, Rob, I
Yeah.
just wanted to add that, this is where that concept of this being a conversation rather than a presentation comes into play, because when you're just sitting and having a conversation with a prospective client, you're prepared to answer whatever they come up with. And it's not a matter of, I have in mind, I'm going to say these 10 things in this order, and suddenly I get thrown because they asked me something that's number 11 on what might have been my list.
Yep.
Well, I'd like to just jump in. I actually was in a class at our association this week, and our from Arizona Realtors Council was teaching the class on the new forms. And I said to him, the 3 words I think are most important in today's world is communication, cooperation, and respect. And I think a lot of that has to come back for us to all work together.
Communication, cooperation, and respect. And that's both in the context of the transaction with the other professionals and I think with clients.
Absolutely.
Which is really interesting because it does go a couple of layers deep. We were doing some role playing with Phil Jones cards down in Virginia Beach. Anybody from Virginia Beach on this morning? All right, if you're not, then I'll just I'll have right to give it my memory. But you know, we were talking about, you know, objections or challenges to questions. And for example, you know, the commission rate is too high, right? Or can you negotiate on your commission? Right? When somebody says that, does everybody know how they would answer that question? And maybe just a couple of, if anybody or any brave soul, somebody says, hey, you know what, your commission is seems to be too high. Any takers on how you would pivot on that, Dan?
Yeah,
I
you
would
have to
say,
kind of
are you
tell
more
them that,
concerned about the profitability of your home or the cost of my fee?
So can you repeat that, Dan?
Are you more concerned about the profitability or getting the best price for your home, or are you more concerned about my fee?
Okay, that's a great reply. And Ron, you had something?
do you want a good negotiator? Because when you want to cut my commission and I agree to it, then I've given up. So you want someone that's strong, that's going to help negotiate. My commission is not, is what it is. I'm a valuable asset to you and to the buyer,
Right.
and to the transaction.
I'm going to try to get the right language to make this a little bit simpler for you. But how about context and say, you know, Dan, my fee is too high relative to what?
Relative to the experience, I mean, my
So-
experience,
And I just put that back to you because when a customer says, well, that fee seems a little bit high, right? I mean, they may have shopped it around, they may not have, but you can go and say, Dan, that seems high relative to what? And then you put the monkey kind of back on their back,
Right.
right? And instead of trying to justify it, you know, a couple of examples that he had shared was, you know, wow, that 7% interest rate, you know, that seems pretty high, or 6% interest rate. You know, it's relative to what their perspective is. If they had a 3%, then that might seem high. If they hadn't bought a house since rates were at 9, 7 might be great. So it's all about, you know, context. And sometimes we take the bait and we get into that features and selling mode, right? Hey, do you want a good negotiator? You know, and I forget what Ron said, but we're talking about like selling instead of, you know, contextualizing what's happening and kind of, you know, future forecasting or future casting and saying, hey, you know, if you were to have a seamless transaction and, you know, my fee is 3%, you were to get full value for your house, you know, where would you be moving to? And you get them into that next state of mind instead of being defensive. So does anybody think that we're going to see a significantly higher or lower amount of sales, like more than 15% in the next 12 months in your local market? Anybody feel it's going to be, you know, hey, we're going to go down by 15% or more, we're going to go up by 15% or more?
I think we're
It's
gonna
Pretty
go up.
hard, pretty hard to predict that right now with the changes going on. You know, I don't know where buyers are sitting. They might be sitting on the sidelines waiting for everything to kind of cool down a little bit.
So, but
So it's
Ron,
hard to say.
you would feel pretty safe saying that, 2021 and 2022 aren't coming back anytime soon, right? That
Don't think so.
unbridled frenzy is not coming back.
Mm-mm.
No,
So
I don't think so.
the market's not bailing anybody out. Okay. There's uncertainty amongst, and I would say there's probably more uncertainty amongst our peers than there is in the public, because I think the public doesn't really focus too much on it.
Well,
Right.
the uncertainty is that what you call that what's going to happen next. That is going to happen next with all these changes that they want to make into the tax code and the economy, that they want to tax what you have without even selling anything. So a few people there, they are sitting on the sideline there. And just now I was reading an article there that a lot of buyers, they are waiting for the interest rate to go down, And this morning, I don't know whose was his economic guy, and he was saying that next year the rates will be down, and the year after maybe the rates will go down again in the 3% range. So that will, fire up the market again. That it will fire up. Certainly here in South Florida, we have a very, very different market, because especially here where I am sitting, we have no land. So there's no building going on, very few here and there patches there. So whoever has a piece of property, they just, sell it to the highest bidder. I just sold a piece of property in Palm Beach that below $600,000, there was nothing available. And soon these houses came on the market. We had to grab it, whatever the seller said. All right, just sign the contract. But we want this. All right, just sign the contract. Yeah, and so that's where we are. But certainly
Right,
the economy will get better. That will get better. That will get better.
So Tony, are you going to stop going on vacation, stop eating, alter your lifestyle because the economy changes? My answer, knowing you, is not, right? Because those of us who've been in the business full time, we don't take a job waiting tables. We don't, second guess our career when the market shifts. Okay, what we do is we pivot, we educate, and we know that when the market shifts, it becomes more of a skills-based industry. And, I think a lot of us are really intelligent. A lot of us know our markets extremely well. Where there's room for improvement is in how we communicate the value to earn what we're worth. Okay.
Oh, I agree with you. I agree with you 100%. Otherwise, I would not be in business for over 40 years if I was that way, if I was thinking that way. And the only thing that perplexes me and makes me think, because don't forget, I have a different background than most of the people around. I was born and raised in Italy there, and over there, because of the government and because the way they do business there, certainly everything is not, up and up and up and up. It's very steady, there's a one by one, just like a sheep, one after another. Here, it's more progressive. That, I would never imagine selling over 100 homes a year. I would never imagine making more than $1 million a year. Things that, but it looks like that what I was trying to convey is that it looks like the way things are going in our society here. I was joking with somebody, I said 40 years ago, I left communism in Europe, and now Europe is following me here. So that's what I was trying to. I hope that does not happen. Believe me, that's why I came here for. Otherwise I would stay over there.
I have a question for the Florida market. I just had a couple of clients who have said to me that the market, or not necessarily the market, but the prices have really started to drop dramatically in Florida. Is that true?
No, the market, the single family home, they are not dropping anytime soon. Maybe it's the condo.
What about the
market.
condos?
The condo, yeah, the condo, they're starting to take a beating because we went from 4,000 units in January, and now we have almost 9,000 condos on the market.
There's a lot. There's a lot of condos out there.
Yeah,
Competition
so
is
maybe that's what it
unbelievable.
was.
Right, so I want to try to suck this conversation back to where we are. And one thing that strikes me, Tony, is when you first came here, your English wasn't great, but your motivation was off the chart, correct?
Well, sure, my blood was flowing in my veins because I was 20 some years old, and I was fortunate enough to land in New Jersey, there in Caldwell, New Jersey, 20 miles west from New York City, where you have everything around you. I mean, I was like in a wonderland. Tony was so happy he was in a wonderland.
So Tony, how many houses did you sell like your first 2 years in real estate? And there's a point for me asking this.
Sure, no, I got into real estate in June of 1983. I was working as a waiter at night, and in the morning at 7 o'clock, I was in my office already. And within a year, I got it, what you call there, to sell. I was closing between 5 to 10, an average of 8 or 9 there, homes. Within a year, I was doing that. And because my English was, it was so poor, there that I heard somebody else from my broker that there was a guy that finished high school. He was no money, whatever, and he was going to knock doors. Every day he was knocking on doors. I said, really? And the guy made money that way? He said, yeah, every day I used to drop him off in that corner. And then when he got a listing appointment, I used to go there with the paperwork, sign him up, and bring him back to the office. Oh, I
Right.
said,
So Tony, you knew you were going to be successful because, that was the mindset that you had. Now it's what, 40 years later, and you're still hopping on a call at 11 o'clock on a Friday to sharpen your skills and to learn how to become more relevant in the marketplace that we're in today. And, you're a perfect case for what I'm trying to do, is trying to give you the tools to communicate to the public. And I think it's really the real estate community that's even more confused and kind of off balance with what's going on here. Okay.
But the reason being is because unfortunately, I'm not proud to say, unfortunately, our industry, we are in a situation that we are in because people, they have not educated themselves. They get the license and that's it. They let these people loose So a lot of them, they are not educated. They don't know what the heck they're doing. When I got into the business, my broker did not want to hire me because she had no training for me. Another girl said, no, he's a good guy. He's a nice guy. I'll train him. So this girl showed me the way to, and every day, almost every day, I was at the board of realtor, every course. They told me I need to know how to price a house. All right, good, let's go and learn. So, and that's how everything turned around.
Right. So that part you've got. So here's a couple of things that you might want to even just jot down, even though they're on that sheet. Without comparison, you can't deliver or demonstrate value, right? Because if everybody was charging 5% and giving lousy service and we wanted to charge 3%, okay, that comparison would put us as a tremendous value. So without comparison, you can't deliver value. And when somebody says that seems high, or can you do better, you have to bring it down to relativity compared to what, right? And there's always different levels of service. If somebody's out there saying, hey, we have a flat fee for $1,000, we'll put it into the MLS, that's not what we deliver, right? So we need to be clear about our context and be able to communicate that. The second piece of navigating through these changes, and this is probably more important than ever, because you think that buyers and sellers, before the NAR settlement were confused and frustrated because of the lack of inventory and the sporadic nature of the market. Does anybody feel like, consumers, especially buyers, are probably a little bit frustrated and jaded? Yes. Okay. So this word here, empathy, okay? And it's not like, you know, oh, that's so sad to hear that's happening. Like, to me, that's what empathy was. But empathy is a little bit different in our communication. And what's the definition? For me, empathy is probably having pity or
Max, group.
sympathy on, you know, somebody else's circumstances. But this is not what empathy is, at least in this context. Anybody want to give a shot at what defining empathy is? Because there's a definition I'm going to give you that you need to write down. Anybody want to give a shot?
Well, you know, empathy is that we need to understand their wants and needs and where they're coming from, and certainly make sure that they know we are on their side. I understand, you know, and then go on with what we have to say, what we have to present.
Okay, the definition according to Google is the action of understanding, being aware of, being sensitive to, and vicariously experiencing the feelings, thoughts, or experiences of another. That's the traditional definition of empathy, probably in line with what most of us thought. But here's two things that you need to write down. Number one is empathy makes us relatable. Empathy makes us relatable. Does that make sense to everybody? Like that, what you were talking about, Tony, empathy makes us relatable to the other person because we kind of, we vicariously experience their feelings, we understand their feelings, right? But here's a new definition for empathy. Empathy is to care about what the people you care about care about. Think about it. Empathy is to care about what the people you care about are caring about, right? It sounds confusing, but I would even write that down and think about it. So it's a different definition of saying, oh, I feel so bad, the market's tough, I understand what you're going through, right? That's my empathy without really thinking about it intentionally. But when you think intentionally about what empathy is to make you relatable, empathy is caring about what the people you care about care about. All right. And I think it's intentionally written to be like redundant, because you know who you care about, who you're trying to help, right? You want to understand what they care about, and now we're going to care about that to create a relationship. When people are buying a home, we need to understand what's important to them, right? And even more so than, you know, I need, you know, 3 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms, right? That's, you know, that's an order taker. You know, empathy creates relationships. Empathy creates an ability to position ourselves for a reasonable price, right? Because we don't want to be in this industry and, you know, be cutting our commission because others are.
Well,
Okay.
the other thing is that it's very important that no matter, you know, what we say, you know, is that the presentation, when you're in front of that client there, the presentations are very, very important, because you can be on the phone for 3 hours, but then when you show up, you stuck. Even what you call there, when you talk to people in the street, if you don't go, when you go to the presentation, you know, then you stuck there, you don't make anything. So I would ask you, you know, to have a great, you know, presentation that if we can put together with all the brains that we got in this company here, if we can put together the best presentation that when it comes to the listing side and the buyer side. So if the people want to do the business, the agents want to do the business, they will memorize all that, and they will be the best that they can be, So especially now with this buyer agency there, you know, that should be very, very important for somebody to learn all that step by step, what we have to do when we present it, you know, why should they pay what they have to pay, you know, for you know.
Right. I'm gonna
Rob?
go ahead.
I wanted to say that I think a big component of empathy, I cannot remember her name, but it was the agent that you had that did the probing questions. So she really discovered what their wants and needs were, what their specific reasons were. whether it
agree.
was their child, it's on a certain team, plays sports, and they were looking for a school with a good football team, so they would want to look for a home in that vicinity. So I thought that was very good.
That was Angie Verstock, and yes,
Yeah.
She was amazing. And what I love about these conversations are when I listen to what somebody that's got 40 years experience is saying, and somebody that's been in the business for 7 years. It begs me to look at things differently, and I'm going to ask maybe like a Robert Garver or a Wilson or a Gary Greenacre. If you look at if you were to take a look at most of agents, they go on an appointment. Is that appointment being driven by the client, asking a bunch of questions and spinning us around, or are we, being able to bring structure through our communication skills? It's a very interesting question.
I think that the agents who are the most successful, they're the ones who are driving the conversation at these meetings. At one point I did sit down with a previous clients, and I started to talk to them about, what we were going to do, and the guy took over the conversation, and it went downhill very quickly. And I recognized the fact that I had obviously lost control of that conversation, and I never let that happen again. I think it's imperative that we control the conversation.
We had a good agent here in Tucson that said the only steering that we do as agents and should do is steering the conversation back to business. And it was, I say, I can speak for our Tucson agents that the majority of them go into a listing appointment, go into even a buyer's representation appointment with a soft structure of how that meeting is going to go, what points we're going to hit, where we're going to hit those points, when we're going to hit those points in the conversation. And we have the ability and the professionalism to get away from the kids' softball game back to the conversation of, are we selling your house? Are we buying a house? Because the majority of our agents don't want to waste the time of in the sales world, the tire kickers. They want the people that are actively wanting to participate in a real estate transaction.
Yeah, well, that's for sure. The other thing is that it's that to be a great salesperson is that have the ability to ask the questions. Because once you ask questions, then you are in control. And that's what whoever masters that, they are the greatest, sales people. They are greatest agent in the business.
Even jumping on what you said there, we know how to ask those questions. The professionals know how to ask the questions. I would even take it a step further and tell you that the professionals are the ones that know when to be quiet. And we know when our questions have led them to the conversation that we want to have, and the conversation that is leading to 3 more conversations down the road, and hitting those bullet points that we prepared before we even step foot in their house. We ask the right questions to get to the point, and we're able to gear the conversation towards real estate while still maintaining a professional. So
Sure.
it's amazing. It's amazing what the power of being quiet can do.
Oh, yes. Yeah, because that's what they say. Selling is not telling. Selling is asking and see what it is that they're looking for.
Yep.
And listening, and listening. You have to listen.
Amazing what happens when we listen to our clients.
So let me ask this thought-provoking question. Okay. Is the fee for our service correlated more to the service we provide, or the communication and the conversation that we have when engaging into the agreement?
Well, your service, the fees of your service is the correlation, the kind of service that you give them. If you feel that you're giving them top-notch service.
Tony, I'm gonna stop. I'm gonna just stop for a second on that comment, because I think that's conventional wisdom, right? But there are so many agents that deliver off the chart service, but I want to use my own language here that I have. They are, they're timidly sharing or selling their services instead of boldly attracting through powerful communication. Okay, so the fee for your service can be scraped and cut down if we can't communicate and demonstrate that in a really professional way. And it's not like it's not like arrogant, pound on your chest, say I'm the best ever. Okay, there's art to communicating, and I'm using words like empathy, okay, in creating the value prop that we have. Okay, because if you look around our industry, okay, and for example, I don't know who had said this. I listen to a lot of podcasts, read books and YouTube videos, but in many industries, and I even believe on Wall Street, like if you're a stockbroker and you put together a company, it's like an unwritten rule that there's a 10% finder's fee for putting that together on significantly higher values than selling real estate. Okay. And, we charge a very reasonable fee, in my opinion, for the value of the services that we provide. And if we don't know how to demonstrate the value that we provide, then we need to go back to step one. But, I know our friend Tom Toole, who was on our mastermind once for the group and also spent a session with our team leaders, talks about a study from the Bright MLS, which is, up in the Northeast. And they did a study which showed something like 14.3% lower sales prices for sale by owners versus properties that were put onto the MLS. Okay. I think that's pretty significant, right? And if we're able to generate 14% more, and if the real estate community collectively charges 4 to 6%, my math isn't that great at, it's 8% more, right? And a lot less stress. It seems like it's a really great value prop, but if we don't know how to communicate that, and we're losing out. And I'm telling you, I feel it's 80%, 90%, our ability to communicate our value and to substantiate the fee or the price that we charge, versus, here's the service that you did, Wilson, you did a great job. I'm going to pay you more. And somebody else did a mediocre job. They're going to get paid a little bit less. We establish our price up front. Okay. Then we deliver the service. So, especially at Remax, we have so many people with such strong resumes, wickedly smart people. And I just want to say that maybe being awesome is not good enough to get paid what you're worth. Okay. If you can't communicate it, it's gonna be a headwind for your business model. Okay. And if finder fees on Wall Street for billion-dollar transactions typically are 10%, I think a 5 or 6% fee for transacting a very complex real estate transaction is a very reasonable fee that we ought to be able to defend. We ought to be able to explain with empathy, not arrogance, how the fee translates to the value that we deliver. Okay. And many of us on this call here are extremely successful. And unfortunately, there's some of us that, are, struggling to get to where they want to be in this business. Okay. And by and large, the real estate community is not, we're not making as much as attorneys. We're not making as much as doctors. And some people really, they invest, they struggle, they're not getting paid what they're worth. We need to make sure that we pull the whole package together. We have the fulfillment model, but then we can communicate what we're worth without hesitation, without having to think, because it is humanly impossible to write, perform, and edit at the same time. So we need to know exactly how we're going to engage, how we're going to do this, okay? And, Tony, you went into a comment that I want to bring out right now where you're saying that, maybe, there may be adverse changes to tax policy. There may be adverse changes here, adverse changes there. We may not like these changes that have happened with the community where we need to sign a written agreement. We may not like all this, but it's here, okay? And we can't let the external factors control, our livelihoods. But what we can do is we can communicate. I think if we can master the communication, we can have empathy, we can have context where we compare things, that we can earn what we're worth. We can have clients that have a very positive experience, a referable experience that can grow our business and get paid fairly. Okay. So, I don't know, Robert Garber, you had an office that, had a reputation for stellar client experiences and, probably not that many consumer complaints, right? With the experience level that you had. You're on mute.
Sorry. Yeah, I was fortunate, the office was fortunate that there was a tremendous group of really well-trained and seasoned agents that, I would see it when they would meet clients in the office. And, my office was right outside of the conference room, and I could listen to them, and they were doing all the things we're talking about today. They were, they knew what they wanted to cover, and they led the conversation through all the points that they wanted to do and to cover. And it almost was like shooting fish in a barrel, because they by the time that the meetings were over, the clients were fully on board. It can work that well.
So this, Robert, is a reset. It's an opportunity for us to, it really is an opportunity for us who are excellent negotiators. Think about the agents, how they negotiate for their clients, Robert, in the context of the people that were in your office. Like some of the best of the people that you've had. Now they have the opportunity to negotiate early on for themselves and to get paid fairly, because I really believe there's a horrific inequity when I'm working with a buyer a year ago. I'm showing them 7 houses. I'm doing the same services, and one house pays me 1%, another one pays me 3%. Is that equitable? Is that equitable to anybody on this call, the way that it was done?
No.
And Wilson, in Tucson, did you have some people that were offering low commissions, like discount brokers that offer a low commission when you bring a buyer in the past?
Yeah, I
Right?
still have them. We've had them for the past, I've been in for 5 years and I've had them for 5 years.
Okay, so let me just ask you this question. I'm guessing it's the same as it is in our other markets, but those brokerages that offer at 1%, are those transactions generally easier or harder than the ones that pay out 3% with a professional agent?
Oh God. Yeah, that's a pretty simple answer. They're horrible.
It's harder. So you work harder to get paid less.
Yeah.
Can anybody tell me the equity to that? Right? It's like you roll the dice, and where the dice lands, that's how you get paid. This seems like it's a lot more equitable if we could do a step back and erase what is ingrained in our heads. And then it just takes us to that fear of having the conversation with buyers and saying that, hey, the game has changed, the stakes have been increased, okay? And now it's time for us to embrace those conversations instead of being afraid of them. And of course, we're going to have to pivot if we're doing some like online lead generation and we're going to email somebody a 5-page agreement in New Jersey and before we show them a house, we might get pushback, and that's understandable. But the smartest people in the business are going to find a way to navigate through that process. Okay. And when we find a way to navigate through the process, I don't think we need to settle for, 2%, 1.5% buy side commissions. I think our commission should be dependent upon the level of service that we provide. So if we have, 11 years of experience, okay, and we are absolutely certain that we know how to navigate through a transaction and eliminate the stress and help negotiate on behalf of our buyers or our sellers, then we should command a reasonable price within the market, which is a good thing, right? I don't want some fly. Yeah, Colin, one second. I don't want some fly by night new company. Maybe it's like some 100% company that does nothing, deciding how much I'm getting paid, which it was a year ago. Okay, and I live. Anybody know what our real estate, what the YouTube channel where these videos, our house is called? Anybody? It's not it doesn't say Remax on it.
Abundance.
It says abundance in real estate. And if you have the abundance mindset, you have no fear of loss, right? As a matter of fact, if somebody elects not to work with us because of price, quite frankly, it's their loss. And it's not an arrogant statement, okay? It's just a statement. Okay.
Rob, going back to what you said before about the 1%, I always used to tell my agents, I still do, that when you're going on an appointment, if you devalue yourself, you're allowing the consumer to take control. And I always like to say they're taking little bites out of you at a time. Nip, 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 nip. So you need to be confident. I always say to the agent, do you really think there's anybody that could service these people better than you? No, I don't. Well, then you have to put forth that feeling to the consumer. They're fortunate to have you. You're going to do the things you need to do. You're going to build that trust.
I agree 100%. Because if you start negotiating your fees lower than what you're expected to get, it just shows them that you're weak. That you're too meek and mild. You got to be strong. That's why we were talking about presentation. Your presentation has to be really on point.
You have to believe in yourself.
Hold on.
One of the comments that we made out here about the whole NAR lawsuit is, do you think we negotiated with our attorneys that represented NAR? They set their fees because they're confident in their abilities, and they didn't even negotiate that great for us. Try to negotiate with an attorney. We need to have the confidence that they do to charge $4.50 an hour.
You don't negotiate with your doctor.
No.
Wilson, I think that brings up a good point. If a good question that you could use would be when the commission issue comes up, say, Mr. Buyer, Mr. Seller, how do you approach this subject with the other professionals in your life? I'm thinking about your doctor, your attorney, your bookkeeper, whoever it is. How do you approach the subject of how much they cost in your life, or don't you? Am I not a professional in your eyes?
Well, and then the other thing is that's where you start building your value. And one of the things that I've found to be successful, and I know our agents here have, is keep it light. One of the biggest comments I say of value that I bring to the table, I answer my phone. You don't get a receptionist, you get Wilson. Every single time that phone rings, you get me.
Yeah, I like that, Wilson. That's a really good one.
It's the simplest value that I bring, but it's one of the best in our world of real estate. How many agents don't answer their phone?
I agree, Wilson. I mean, and respond timely to a text. Like some agents, it takes them 24 hours to respond to a text.
Yeah. Imagine I get a full price offer tonight on your house and I answer that phone call. Well, some other agents wouldn't answer that till tomorrow morning because They don't want it.
So I've gotten tremendous feedback, positive feedback on people copying this. Hey, I call up the Wilson, the listing agent. If I call 5 listing agents, I'm just going to sample Wilson. How many of them answer the phone when you call the first time?
I'm lucky if I get 1.
Okay, I was going to say 2. Anybody else want to chime in? Is it more than 2? Anybody have confidence that more than 2 will pick up the phone?
Anyone betting their next commission on it?
So
2 is a good number.
So what's the harm in having an authentic, hey, Wilson, I just wanted to thank you. Well,
Yeah.
for what? For answering the phone, right? And doesn't that change the context of the conversation with the person you're going to negotiate with your client if they like that property? So smile, instead of being angry about the 4 that don't answer, right? Have gratitude for the person that does. It'll change, it'll move the needle. Okay. Yeah, so I just lost my next train of thought, but
Well, Rob, when we were talking about, commission and knowing your worth, one of the things that we used to talk about, when we would go through objections, was, what happens if when you sit down at the table, the seller says to you immediately, so what's your commission? Before anything else has been talked about, and
Oh, that's easy. My commission's based on my experience and what I bring to the table. It's going to be 3%.
See, I don't
Explain
start
why.
with that. If they ask me what's your commission, I always tell them, well, we'll get to that. Let me go through my presentation, and I show them my visuals. We do, we chit chat first, and then every listing appointment has components to it. So when they ask you that, you got to be able to calm them down. Say, yeah, I'll get to all the numbers later, but let me go ahead and show you this, and let me go ahead and show you that, and then you eventually get to your to the commission part of it, because then they see the value when you show them your presentation.
right. And Ron and Wilson, like, I think this is part of the beauty of how we can all be successful, and we have our personalities, right? And
Right.
what I wanted to just highlight, and I don't know, Mark Feingold, are you able to unmute yourself for 30 seconds? If you're not, it's okay. But in the absence of value is only where price matters, right?
Yep.
Price only matters in the absence of value. And if you can't demonstrate the value, then, if they ask you what's your commission before you talk about what you're selling, like it's just backwards, right? You don't really know what you're buying. And, who thinks that the public doesn't differentiate when they say, hey, I'm going to sell my house, it's 2.5%, 3%. I don't think the public does a good job at differentiating the different levels of services that are provided. They just think, hey, it's a necessary evil, I need to pay. And it's our job to communicate to them, what the value prop is that we have, right? And for me, and there's no right answer. And I'm, Ron, Wilson, I appreciate you sharing, and what works you go with. But for me, my pivot would just be, hey, you know what, Wilson, would you agree that commission doesn't even matter if we haven't decided if we're a good fit to work together?
Yeah.
So, if you don't mind, I just want to ask you a few more questions and then give you an opportunity to ask me before we talk about what the investment is or what the fee is for the service I provide, right? Because if it's premature, you don't know what you're buying. So there's different ways that we can do that. And clearly, Wilson, your confidence was very strong in terms of how you position your price. And everybody's going to have their own way of doing it. But I was going to share, if Mark was able to unmute, Mark had somebody who said, basically, don't even come here if you can't do it for X, right? And we went there and we got Y, which was significantly more than X. Okay.
Well, and part of it is we're chameleons. We got to change it for everyone. So you have those that I can be aggressive and say it's 3%. The other ones, I mean, you go in and you talk about it. And one of my favorite things is, like you just said, let's see if we're a good fit, and then I'll let you know what I'm going to gather some information, and then I'll decide what I'm going to be offering as my commission at the end of our conversation. So it gives them the concept of it's negotiable, but I'm also trying to feel you out. You're trying to feel me out. Let's see if we're a good fit. Let's see what commission makes sense for both of us.
So Wilson, if somebody called you up and said, hey, you know what, things have been really tight, I need to sell my house, but I don't want to pay more than 4%. Can you, are you willing to come out and list my house for 4%?
Absolutely. I'd love to come look at it, because the way I see it is, it's the negotiation didn't even start yet, because I'm not in front of them. I'm not in their house. It's really easy to say no on the phone. We have telemarketers that call us every day. No, I don't want that. But when I'm standing in front of you and showing you my value and showing you what I bring to the table, and that 4% that you have, well, what if I've already built that into the price at the 6% that I usually take it? Let's just make sure it works and we're good. But I don't negotiate on the phone. I do it in person.
Right. So
It's hard to say no to me when I'm standing in front of you.
And I think it's you have history, you have confidence, and you have a strategy, and all that stuff works for you. But I think a lot of us would take it for face value and say, oh, so and so wants me to come out there and list it for 4%. I'm not going to waste my time. I would go out there and I would talk about how I can, provide a value in selling their house, and figure out how do you perform compared to the benchmark in your marketplace, right?
Yeah.
I'm sure, Wilson, you probably sell your listings for 3 to 5% higher than the competition. So if they pay you 2% more, they're getting a 1 to 5% lift. Right? You got to know your numbers. You have to be confident. We're coming to the end of our time, but this is an opportunity, and I use the word opportunity, for us to earn what we're worth on the buy side. It's an opportunity for us to stand out on every side of the business because of the turmoil, right? I'd love it if somebody questions me about, oh, I heard about the lawsuit, I heard I don't have to pay. Somebody says to you, hey, Wilson, I heard, I don't have to pay the buyer's commission anymore. It's awesome, right?
Yeah, that's great. I mean, you never had to, but it's a new
Bingo,
world that
right?
we
You
have.
never had to.
Yeah, you never had to. It's always negotiable. And I'm sorry for the smoke and mirrors that the attorneys have created for the public, but let me go into a little bit of detail about that, and then I usually explain it, and I tell them it's always been negotiable. Come on, guys.
So this is an opportunity for us to make what we're worth. It's an opportunity for us to not get paid the 1% fee because we rolled the wrong dice. Okay, it's an opportunity for us to say, here's what we do, here's how we get compensated. And if you look around at your peers, okay, even more, maybe not in our offices, but broadly across the industry, okay, there are a lot of people that are struggling financially in the real estate industry, which means that we are not an overpaid industry. Okay, we just need to be able to communicate what we're worth. If somebody can get 10% selling a $1 billion business, 6, 7, 5% for selling a house is a tremendous value. Okay, we're letting the media get into our head and control, in some cases, how we think, and that's not healthy. So any last questions before we wrap?
Can I
really-
circle? Is it too late to circle back to empathy and negotiation?
No, I'll stay on it. I just want to be respectful for those who have a hard stop. But Robert, go ahead.
All right, and this is okay to come at me because this is probably a little bit of a pessimist look at things, but it's impossible not to have empathy for. I'm talking as a buyer's agent, not a listing agent, for your buyers, because we're not negotiating for them like we used to. We're not negotiating down where I used to be able to, your furnace is past its normal life expectancy, blah, 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 blah. Now we're getting our buyers to negotiate up. The last 2 closings I had, plus the one I'm about to have that's been taken forever because I have the worst loan officer in the world, I've gotten the COs, the buyers, I got my people to throw out everything that they didn't want to take with them, like old furniture, things like that. You get that. I've had one where you got to stay a month for free after close. You know the rent back, use an occupancy, and then the next month they were going to pay their mortgage. I mean, we're always going over asking. There is no real negotiation unless it's been on the market for a little while, which isn't much. If you have something new in the market and you got 15 people lined up to go see an open house, you got to talk your client into giving everything away for the most part to win that bid. I fought this at the very beginning. You can ask my wife. I would just fight it. I wouldn't do certain things. And I realized that I was losing because I wasn't fighting enough to get my client, the buyer, to give away more, because it was used to be the opposite. And that's very depressing because you don't feel like you're working for your client. You're getting your buyer how much over asking. Oh, I just waived some of the appraisal. We'll give it an estate sale. We'll get rid of everything you leave behind, like the mattress and the couch. That costs nothing to get rid of that. Every little thing matters. You don't know what's going to be important to the seller, so you do everything. Rent back if you have to. Waive some of the appraisal. You're getting your client to do stuff that you would never think about. I mean, I'll just say one thing, because I got Robert Garber and all these guys doing this forever. I've been licensed since 9/11, but it's all been in commercial side up until 6 years ago. And when I first got into this 6 years ago, I did great. The last 2 years, sucking wind, but back to the other thing, negotiation, we're negotiating our buyers up, not down. And it's terrible because you don't feel like you're working for your buyer. You're working for the seller, it feels like. You got to do anything. The seller's got it made because they can do whatever they want. Because also, we waive the inspection except structural environmental. I mean, it's crazy. But it's easy to have empathy because the buyer's getting screwed. But you got to do everything you can to get that win. Otherwise, they're not getting a home.
So Rob,
that's what I got to say.
Okay. So, and I'm a big fan of yours, Robert. You know that, right? And you can't control the market. You, Robert, nobody here can control the market. What we need to do is we need to educate, our buyers of where the market is, right? So what I would be doing, Robert, is, sharing with them, hey, you know what, the market's very competitive. For homes that come on the market in, I don't know what, in Hallworth or whatever market you're working, right? The new listings that go under contract in the first week or 10 days, are going for about 4.5% above ask price on average. So if we're going into this marketplace, I just want to educate you on what you can expect. And I don't know that empathy for where the market is, because if they were in that same circumstance, Robert, and they bought a year ago, what's happened to their purchase?
Well, it's gone up.
It's gone up, right?
Yep.
So, and when it's a buyer's market and buyers can take advantage of sellers and say, hey, I want a new roof, I want a new furnace because the market shifted, right? That's just where the market is. And I know that you're used to saying that part of my value proposition is I can negotiate off the price. But I think now part of your value proposition is that you can educate them on how properties are transacting now. And by doing
I absolutely know that. I mean, my conversation with people, which it should be with everybody, is here's how it works now. You go through the whole process of a turn and review, blah, 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 blah. So you understand the process, from that to under contract, appraisals, go through all that. And then say, look, it's different than it used to be. It used to be, here's what we used to try to do. I said, but now it's all about the terms. Obviously, it's got to be a good price. And here are your terms. Here's the options of terms. Here are the options that we'll get the CO instead of the seller. Maybe try to get more money down if you can. Some people want to waive the appraisal. If it's important to the seller, because I will talk to the seller side, find out what's important to the seller, because they may have, like, let's say it's March, you're closing in May, and they don't want to leave until school's out. So you might do a rent back and you explain to them what that is. No, I go through all the possible options of terms, and we'll see which ones we best, depending on the house that we decide to bid on. I go through all that. I'm just saying that we're negotiating up for our buyers, not down. And that's it. Because everybody talks about negotiation. It's more, you know, you can negotiate, you should, never mind. You know what I'm saying.
And Robert, like, I think, you know, that you use the term like it used to be, right? Well, it's not, it's not like it used to be, and it's not been like that way for a little while.
Yeah, 2 years, pretty much.
Right. So I think the, your empathy and pity are two different things, you know, feeling sorry, like, you can say, hey, you know, the first time home buyer, it's virtually impossible to be a first time buyer in New Jersey based upon what, you know, a younger family makes and what it costs to buy a house. That's factual. Like, a lot of people can't get into the game, but we need to educate people. And I think being positioned or opinioned on the fact that a seller's market or a buyer's market creates empathy. You know, I mean, sellers are doing great. After they buy, they'll be a homeowner and they'll be in that seller's position at some point. So the sooner they get into the game, the better. And, you know, you're not creating the market conditions. You're not, you know, saying that I think not doing a full home inspection or limiting the conditions is a good idea. You're just saying that this is what's happening for people to win transactions in this environment, right? And leave it at that. And, you know, you're somebody who got paid. You're somebody who got short paid for doing a lot of work. This is an opportunity for you, sir, to reset it and say, hey, I'm now determining what I'm getting paid.
No, I understand. You know, when I had that private conversation, I'm not going to bring up to everybody about that 5% commission where I got 1.5.
Right, but now that shouldn't happen. But now that shouldn't happen. We should be having these conversations, and this is the opportunity for you, Robert, and to help somebody win a property, even if winning the negotiation means that you paid over ask, you at least have gotten into the house, right? I mean, that's a milestone for a lot of people when they buy their first house. We forget it sometimes because we live in this industry. That's a huge thing for especially a first-time buyer. And they need you to be strong, and they need you to educate. And sometimes, you know, maybe our personal opinions don't matter as much as just, hey, here's the facts. Here's what it takes to be a buyer. And if you live in the abundant world, you know, not everybody is able to do it. That's just my opinion. And so
anyway, I just wanted to get that out. Thank you.
You got it. And I'll take one other question anybody has, and then we'll wrap it up. Comments? All righty. Well, I appreciate you. I'll see you all next week, and let's focus on our communication. And if you got that book, Exactly What to Say, hopefully you've read a few chapters and it's helping you out. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Rob.